Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tori and today we are working on story 12 in my December daily album. I'll be using a foundation page today, some of these vellum tags from my stash, and then I will be using these die cut numbers that came with my Sizzix mini die cut machine. And some of these acrylic star pieces from Close to My Heart. I really like these because they're super thin, and as of right now they're the only acrylic pieces I've actually tried. I have a piece of just plain old plain old printer paper pulled out that I'm going to use to adhere to the back of my photo. So first things first though, I had printed this photo with borders, but I wanted them to be a little bit smaller than they ended up being. So I'm just gonna trim off a little bit of the excess white that's on each side of my photo. And then what I will do is actually adhere this photo with a pocket opening to this printer paper. The reason that I decided to do that was because this foundation page that I had prepped, I used Distress texture paste, and the texture paste that I ended up using had like a gritty, like cracked texture. So I noticed that it tends to feel a little bit grabby to the hand whenever you're touching it. And I didn't want to risk that causing my vellum to bend or anything like that when I was sticking these tags in and out from behind the photo. So I figured I could just adhere my photo directly to a piece of printer paper and then create that little pocket so that the vellum had a nice smooth edge to slide in and out of. And then I will use that printer, I don't know why I keep saying pattern, that printer paper to adhere this photo to my actual page. I'm just going to use a little bit of red line tape right in the middle, and then I've used my roller adhesive to add some tape to the outside of the photo edges, if you will. And then I'm going to pull that off and get that adhered down. I wanted to have that red line tape just to give it a little bit of extra stability, since there is a lot of texture on this page because of the texture paste that I used. Now that I've got that adhered down, I'm just going to test my theory that this will work with my tags, and it does. So I'm going to pull those out, and on these tags I'm actually going to write what each of the kids asked Santa for Christmas. So I'm going to write each child's name really big with my Posca paint pen. Luna's name I wrote completely off center, so I added a little moon next to it because she is our little moon. That is what Luna means. So I just usually add like a little moon next to her name if I'm just using the first letter of her name or for any other reason that I might need to fill some extra space. And then once I have all of the names written down, I'm going to use the Slick Writer pen from Ali Edwards to write underneath each name what each child asked Santa for Christmas. So Oliver had asked for a giant Eevee and Freedom, which confused everybody because we weren't expecting that one. Leland had asked for a giant Mimikyu, and Luna had asked for a lot of pink Barbies and an Eevee. So if you can tell, our kids are very much into Pokemon right now, so they all asked for something Pokemon related from Santa. I'm going to set those aside so that that paint pen and that Slick Writer pen can really dry before I start messing with those tags any further. And then while I'm waiting for those to dry, I'm going to pull out this piece of scrap paper, which is actually scrap watercolor paper. And I'm going to die cut the 1 and the 2 out from this number set that I have. I'm going to die cut these numbers 2 times so that I can stack them on top of each other to create a little bit of dimension, but not too much dimension. I'll just glue these numbers together using my Barely Arts craft glue. And then that will add a nice little shadow around each of the numbers because it will have that extra layer of cardstock underneath it. While I'm getting this cut out, I do want to give a little bit of a disclaimer that my children are in the room right next to me running around and just screaming at the top of their lungs. So I'm so sorry if you can hear them screaming in the background of my voiceover. Hopefully that's not the case, but just in case you do, they're just having fun in the other room. So I'm going to go ahead and get my die cut numbers pulled over, and I'm going to start gluing those together. I mentioned before that I'm going to be using my Barely Arts craft glue, and I'm going to be using this pickup tool from Simon Says Stamp. I really love doing this, but I put a little bit too much glue on that too, so it seeped out of the inner circle of it. So I just used the pick portion of my pickup tool to just swipe up the excess glue. Layering the die cuts like this with basically just gluing them together, I find very relaxing. So I super love doing it to add it to my pages because it does give that little bit of extra dimension, but I also just find it to be a relaxing task. So I'm going ahead and laying out my tags in a way that I think that I might be placing them permanently in the album. And then I'm laying the 12 around to see where I want to put it. And I actually decide to put it right directly on the photo. We weren't centered in this photo, so there was a lot of empty space to the left-hand side. So it ended up working out perfectly that I could place my number there. And it was nice and dark over in that area. So it really made the number 12 that I'm gluing down pop. I end up dropping my 2 here, so thankfully it landed glue side up, shockingly enough. And I'm going to go ahead and get that picked back up and then place down next to the 2. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some twine that I recently purchased from Michael's. It's got a little bit of a silver thread in it. And I'm going to use this twine just to add a little bit of embellishment to the top of each of my tags. And I will do this to all 3 tags. You can see here I very clearly did not need to add as much as I was adding. But this is actually the first time I've ever purchased twine like this. So I guess I just wasn't sure. I'm not sure. I add things to tags all the time, but I must have thrown myself off with the fact that it's twine and I've never used it before. So I'm going to go ahead and get those added to each tag, and then I'm going to use my tiny attacher to do a little X staple on top of where the twine is crossed over to keep that twine in place so that it's not pulling out at all. Now that I've got all of my twine in place, I'm going to go ahead and move on to my last embellishment here, which is going to be these acrylic stars. And you can see that one side of the acrylic stars is shiny and the other side of the acrylic stars is like a more matte finish. And I really don't want the shiny side to be showing. I don't know which one is the right side, but I like the matte side more. So that's the side that I want to be up. So I'm making sure to place shiny side down on all of the stars. And I'm going to use some little cuts of red line tape to hold these down to my page, especially since 2 of these stars I'm actually placing directly on the texture paste and some of the O's that are visible in my joy words. I thought the stars looked really good in those areas, and having the stars in those 2 O's and in the kind of red space down underneath the photo created a nice little triangle. So I really liked that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get these adhered down to my page and get that red line tape pulled off the back of the stars so that they're sticking nice and strongly. And that'll be the end of my setup for this page. Once I've got all that finished, I'm going to go ahead and get this added back into my album. This is another page that I've actually punched my holes while I was working on the page because I wanted to have that visual center to reference. So I'm going to have to line this up pretty well with story number 11, which is the story right before this. and I do end up needing to trim off some excess. My main focus for this was just getting the holes lined up. So as long as I had those holes lined up, I was okay with trimming off some excess paper on either spread that was left. I'm also using just regular score tape instead of my roller adhesive on this particular process to adhere these two pages together. This is because this page with the texture paste is actually quite like wonky. It does not lay flat because of that texture paste. So I didn't want to run the risk of using my roller adhesive and then the page separating, because there is a short period of time that you can separate that roller adhesive from other things that it's stuck to. And I didn't want that to happen with these two pages being stuck together, because the other page is kind of wonky and, well, this page is kind of wonky and it kind of popped back up, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and get this stuck together and then get my tags added back in and place this in my album. And then I am done. That's going to be the last thing that I do after I get everything trimmed down and stuck back into my album. If you made it to the end of this video, leave me the word joy in the comments below. And if you'd like, tell me something that brings you joy during the holiday season. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.